네, 2021
The 2021 grand opening was held, and now we will start the very first official event, Seminar on Cooperation for Global Arctic. We invite experts from China, France, Japan, Korea, and Poland, marking the 25th anniversary of the AC, and to look back on the cooperations between observer nations and Arctic Council. First, we will have a few words from the key participants from Korea and abroad. First, I'd like to invite Mr. Hong Young-gi, Government Representative for Arctic Affairs of MOVA, Korea. Thank you. In particular, I would like to thank all participants of the seminar on cooperation for global Arctic, including the Arctic Council cooperation. We engage in multilateral and bilateral diplomatic activities. Ever since becoming an observer since 2013, we have been engaging in various projects and cooperations. And through the working groups, environmental protection, scientific research, renewable energies are just some of the areas where Korea is active. And we are a part of multilateral Arctic frontier, and with observer nations and with Arctic states, we have multiple and bilateral MOUs. Marking the 25th anniversary of the AC, we are going to look at what kind of cooperation will be needed through the discussions with experts. There are complex political relations and interests at play in the Arctic. And to produce good results, the challenge is daunting. However, I hope this opportunity can be used for us to engage in frank discussions to solidify our policies. Lastly, I hope for a successful seminar and thank all the participants, and I wish you good health and happiness. Thank you. Thank you very much. And next, the AC chair nation, Russia. We have a congratulatory message from the SAO chair.
And distinguished guests, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the seminar on cooperation for a global Arctic. It is a year to celebrate Arctic cooperation. 2021 marks 25 years since the formation of the Arctic Council. In a quarter of a century of its existence, the Council has evolved into an influential forum for dialogue, knowledge development, policy recommendations, and concrete actions. Most importantly, it has forged a relationship between nations and cultures, united in our goals for a sustainable and prosperous Arctic. As climate change rapidly impacts the Arctic with global effects, the Council's work, including engagement with observers and other partners, is critical for developing a positive agenda and coordinating joint action to secure a prosperous future that benefits us all. The Republic of Korea has been an Arctic Council observer since 2013. Korea is an important participant in projects such as the Arctic Migratory Birds Initiative and is a valuable contributor to meteorological and climate science. This year, Russia assumed the chairmanship of the Arctic Council. During our chairmanship, we aim to foster closer cooperation to implement shared goals with all Arctic states, indigenous permanent participants, observers, as well as other interested partners. We want to strengthen Arctic cooperation between countries and regions, as well as promote new connections and collaborative approaches to achieve shared goals and find the best solutions to emerging challenges. Maintaining the spirit of cooperation is of utmost importance. To achieve a sustainable and prosperous future, we need to focus on approaches that are truly collective. Thank you, and I wish you a productive seminar.
네, 다음으로
And next, the Polar Activities Promotion Act, the building of the next IBRV are some of the key achievements led by the Director General Song Sang-gun of MOF, and we will hear a few words.
해양수산
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Song Sang-gun, Director General for Marine Policy Bureau of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. I would like to express my appreciation to everyone for gracing us with their presence at the very first seminar on cooperation for global Arctic today, including Ambassador for Arctic Cooperation Hong Young-kim and Acting President Kim Jong-duk of KMI and President Kang Sungho of COPRI. And I would like to extend my gratitude to all of those involved in organizing today's event, as well as our participants today at the seminar. Korea started its Arctic activities with Arctic scientific research in 1993 and laid the foundation for full-scale Arctic research by establishing the Dasan Arctic Station in 2002 and the research icebreaker Araun in 2009. By utilizing the icebreaker Araun, we have been continuously promoting research cooperation with various countries in areas such as oceanographic observation and research on sea ice and marine environment ecosystems. And in recognition of these efforts and scientific achievements, in 2013, we obtained the status of observer of the Arctic Council. As a responsible observer country, Korea has been working to expand cooperation with Arctic countries. Korea participated in the PAME, or Protection of the Arctic Marine Environment Working Group's Arctic Marine Indigenous Use Mapping Project in 2017 to promote, for the first time as an observer state, a working group project in cooperation with indigenous people. As such, through exemplary Arctic Council working group activities, Korea built a tightly knitted network of Arctic cooperation based on trust. In addition, we are broadening our exchanges with Arctic countries by establishing a Korean-style Arctic cooperation platform such as Arctic Partnership Week and Korea Arctic Academy. In particular, this year, the Polar Activities Promotion Act was enacted to support systematic polar activities encompassing the Arctic and the Antarctic. And the plan to build our next-generation research icebreaker capable of high-latitude research above 30 degrees of the northern latitude was confirmed, citing just some examples of our efforts in building the institutions and infrastructure to carry out Arctic activities. In addition, based on the mature conditions in Korea and the cooperative network accumulated abroad, we established a new Arctic strategy to widely usher in the Arctic Era 2050. The essence of this strategy is to, in line with the country's changed status from the past, build strong trust with Arctic countries, indigenous groups, and the international community actively participating in and contributing to solving issues facing the Arctic Circle, such as climate change, environmental conservation, and cooperation with indigenous communities. To respond to the Arctic climate crisis, we will build a comprehensive Arctic Circle observation network essential for climate change research and share relevant data with foreign countries and international organizations to contribute to enhancing our ability to respond to climate change in the Arctic. In particular, in order to participate in solving the current issues of indigenous communities facing crises such as that of settlements and infectious diseases arising from the changes in the Arctic environment, we plan to expand research investments in response to environmental issues directly related to the survival of indigenous peoples. The Republic of Korea will continue to strive to become a trusted Arctic partner that opens the future of the Arctic. This event was also held today to carry out our role as a responsible observer state and to strengthen cooperation amongst observer nations. I believe this is a very meaningful event where experts from the observer countries of the Arctic Council come together to explore new Arctic cooperation. Although it was not possible for all observer state experts to gather in one place due to various restrictions, I hope that you will together muster your wisdom so that a new direction for Arctic cooperation can be suggested and practical policies can be identified. Based on today's achievements, I sincerely hope that today's inaugural event develops into a flagship forum that regularly discusses cooperation between the Arctic Council and observer states in the future. Once again, I would like to welcome all the participants and wish all the members of the polar community good health and happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director General Song, for your good words. And next is the organizer of this event, Acting President of Kim Jong-duk of KMI.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kim Jong-duk, Acting President of Korea Maritime Institute. I would like to first sincerely thank everyone today for the seminar, for coming to the seminar on cooperation for global Arctic. I would like to express my special thanks to Director General Song Sang-gun for Marine Policy Bureau of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, and also Ambassador Hong Young-gi for Arctic Cooperation from MOFA, and President Kang Sungho of COPRI for taking out of their busy schedules. And I would like to also extend my gratitude to our speakers from China, from Poland, from Japan, as well as France. The Arctic is a space of global cooperation, and the importance of close cooperation between the Arctic and non-Arctic regions is growing in order to solve various Arctic issues such as scientific research, response to the climate crisis, protection of marine ecosystems, and economic activities. In particular, this year marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of the Arctic Council and the year in which the Arctic Council 2030 strategy was established. And we are at a point in time where the role of the observer is becoming more important than ever to strengthen Arctic cooperation centered on the Arctic Council. Against this backdrop, today's seminar on cooperation for global Arctic was prepared to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Arctic Council and to seek future-oriented cooperation directions with Arctic Council experts from various observer states. In particular, this year is assessed to have marked a milestone in Korea's Arctic policy. There were significant achievements such as the enactment of the Polar Activities Promotion Act and the finalization of the plan to build the next-generation research icebreaker, as well as the 2050 Arctic Activity Strategy. I truly believe that today's seminar will serve as an important venue to engage in some systematic collaboration amongst the observer states. Once again, thank you all and welcome participants to the seminar.
And last but not least, the leading institute of Korea's polar research. From COPRI, we have President Kang Sungho. Hello, I am Kang Sungho, President of COPRI. At the 2021 APW, we just held the grand opening. And as an observer to the Arctic Council, Korea will now share its status and prospect of Arctic cooperation. Director General Song Sang-gun, Representative Hong Young-gi for Arctic Affairs, Acting President Kim Jong-duk of KMI, who prepared this seminar, and all staff, thank you very much for all your hard work. In May 2013, Korea obtained the observer status. And since then, not only at the AC, but along with Arctic states, Korea has engaged in cooperation on Arctic challenges, recognizing the importance of policy. And in 2013, we announced a policy framework and the framework master plan on Arctic policy. And this year, we adopted the 2050 Arctic Activity Strategy, and also the framework Arctic policy will be established for the coming years. Not only as an Arctic states, but as Arctic observers, also we need to share the policies to think about how to engage in cooperation. And through the APW, we have been provided with a forum for discussion. Starting today, with China, France, Japan, Poland, countries participating in this seminar, and all other observer nations, we hope to start discussions on how we can cooperate in the future. The polar research is led by COPRI, and as president of COPRI, I hope that what is discussed today, based on the scientific research of Korea, can be used to expand our cooperation with observer states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We had a total of 5 remarks from our distinguished guests leading Arctic cooperation in Korea. Next, I would like to invite Government Representative Hong Young-bi for Arctic Affairs to moderate the session. Let me now give the floor to Ambassador Hong Young-gi.
Role. And as all observer states are very aware, the role of observer state in Arctic Council is limited. But as time goes by, we see there is more and more common ground in terms of interest of all humanity, such as fighting climate changes or protecting fishery resources in Arctic. And in its sense, actually, today we invited very active Arctic observers to our seminars. Each of these experts from each observer state will make a presentation on Arctic policy and their ideas how to expand role of observer state in Arctic Council and other fora. First, we would like to open the floor for Professor Ping-su. She is Associate Professor at Tongju University. She was also visiting scholar to Nansen Institute and Research Fellow at Tongju University. And please welcome with big hands the Professor Ping-su.
Thanks. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My presentation is about China and the Arctic Council. Next. I'm invited to speak for 3 parts. Firstly, national Arctic policy. How does China see the Arctic affairs? There is no single comprehensive treaty for all Arctic affairs in China's opinion. The Charter of the United Nations, UNCLOS, Spitsbergen Treaty, and other treaties will govern Arctic affairs. We do not have territory sovereignty, but the observer do have rights in respect of scientific research, navigation, overflight, vision, lay of submarine cables and pipelines in the high sea and other relevant sea areas in the Arctic Ocean, and the rights to resource exploration and exploitation in the area. In addition, contracting parties to the Spitsbergen Treaty enjoy some other rights. Okay, next. How does China see the Arctic affairs? Melting ice in the Arctic has led to changes in the natural environment, or possibly can result in accelerated global warming, rising sea levels, increased extreme weather events, damaged biodiversity, and other global problems, and offer opportunities for the commercial use of sea routes and development of resources in the region. Commercial activities in the region will have considerable impact on global shipping, international trade, and energy supply, bring about major social and economic changes. Next, please. China has not been involved in the Arctic affairs. From the table, we can see that from 1921 and to currently, and we are also involved into the Arctic Council as observer in 2013. Next, please. China's Arctic policy goals and basic principles on the Arctic are as following. We try to understand the Arctic through scientific research, and we try to protect the Arctic national environment, technological systems, resilience, and culture, and develop the Arctic, such as their economic and social development, and also participate in the governance of the Arctic. Thanks. Next. China's policies and position on participating in the Arctic affairs are we try to deepen the exploration and understanding of the Arctic, protecting the environment of the Arctic and addressing climate change, utilizing Arctic resources in a lawful and rational manner, participating actively in the Arctic governance and international cooperation, promoting peace and stability in the Arctic. Next. Current status of cooperation within the Arctic Council. Firstly, China strictly follows the Observer Manual of Arctic Council, and at the same time, we actively send experts to join the working group of Arctic Council, such as, like me, I mean SDWG, and my colleague in Tongji University in Palm, and also like CAF and AMF, we also have different delegates here. And China also joined all government meeting openly to observers, such as ministerial meeting and SEO. Next. And we have already sent more than 25 experts to research programs. The numbers are here, like 2 for the Global Ocean Exhibition Observing Network of them, and 2 for recommendation and review of relevant reports of the active contaminants action programs. Extra. Next, please. There are more improvement space, especially during more research programs of the Active Council. I think that observer could promote increasing openness of the Active Council. Next. Thirdly, proposal of observer-led cooperative projects, at least 1 or 2. Here I try to give 2. So firstly, observer could cooperate to organize international voyages. Secondly, I think I also I ask working groups, and I know that there are a very successful research programs, multilateral research program like Mosaic. It's supported by German Research Institute, and many other countries with scientists join it. Like China also provided logistic support there. So in my opinion, that I think we could establish a large-scale international research programs. Next. Okay, that's all my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ping-Su. Professor Ping-Su very concisely and beautifully outlined China's Arctic policy, also made some useful proposals about how to further Arctic activity of observer states, such as cooperation within AC to promote research, join more research programs, or observer cooperate to organize international open voyages. Now, I wish to open the floor not just to the panelists, but also all the participants here. We have 5 minutes, so I wish all of you at least raise 1 or 2 questions to Professor Ping-Su about her presentation. Thank you.
Professor Ping-Su, thank you for your presentations. You mentioned that you are China and now preparing large-scale, preparing to establish a large-scale international research program. Can you elaborate on the plan on this kind of try?
Sorry, I'm cut off. Just as I mentioned, like Mosaic in IASC is a very successful research program, multilateral international research program. It has done very successful that many organized and supported by the scientists and research institutes from different countries. I do not have a detailed research programs that I could suggest now, but in the future, if you have some, you need some detail that we could have more discussed. But Mosaic is a very good model that we could learn from. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Ping-Su. Because we have a couple of more minutes, I wish to raise some questions to you directly. In your presentation, you mentioned that current status of a cooperation within AC. Also, you suggest that observer could promote increasing openness of the Arctic Council. Yes, I heard similar complaints from observer states or outsiders who are about this openness issue, especially some even in researches and scientific researches, and the result should be more open to the outsiders. Do you have something in your mind about how to increase, promote openness of the Arctic Council, please?
That's a very good question. I remember that the president from Iceland said that how wide the table of Arctic Council is depends on that the contribution of the Arctic Council observer. So that we need a lot of actually more contribution, and then we can to consider that what kind of space that we could improve. And in my opinion, that we could consider to send more experts to the working group to let a lot of experts to join the research programs in the working groups. I think that's the one of the space that we could improve. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody who wishes to raise another question on the Professor Pingsu's presentation? Yes, please.
Thank you, Professor Ping Su. I'd like to ask one question about the domestic mechanism of coordination for the cooperation with the Arctic Council in China. And let me ask you the roles of the Tongji University. What is the roles in this mechanism of the Tongji University? Thank you.
You mean the mechanism of Tongji University? I do not quite get your question.
Right.
So you mean the mechanism of China or the mechanism of Tongji University about the join the Arctic Council?
Mechanism of China, in China, and also role of the Tongji universities in the mechanism.
Oh, oh, the role of Tongji University. The mechanism of China, that I think that for the Arctic Council, that the delegates are sent by Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Natural Resources Ministry. So like Tongji University, the two delegates of Tongji University, we are sent by Natural Resource Ministry. And like the CAF delegates, they are chosen and sent by Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And like the role of Tongji University, I think that we do have a lot of experts focusing on the polar study, and such as ocean, and such as the environment department, and also like school political science and international relations. So we have already formed strong expert groups, and we fully supported the China's role in the Arctic. Thanks.
Maybe I think I can take one more question toward China's Arctic policy, because we have a great interest in this area. The floor is just open again. Is there anybody who can? Sure.
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. I have one question regarding the geopolitical tension in the Arctic. The melting of the ice in the Arctic opens up the economic opportunities, but some experts worries that it also triggers the geopolitical tension in the Arctic. How do you see the future cooperation in the Arctic? Thank you.
Thanks. That's a very big question. I think that the Arctic is a very important geopolitical position, as we all know that it's a special place, and also, in my opinion, that I'm deeply influenced by anthropology ideas. So I think that the climate change is more important than the geopolitical attention. So I think that that's the global challenge that every country has to face. So it needs the cooperation not only in the Arctic states, but also the states from like observer country and other country. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll take just one more question because we still have time. And sorry for that, but actually inviting China in this forum means something to all of us. And I think there are many colleagues who wish to make a question on Chinese Arctic policy here.
This question may not be that easy. Do you think near-Arctic policy of China will stand for the time being? Are you going to do you think China will stick with it for many years to come?
Thanks. That's a very good question. Actually, it's not difficult for me because although that the National Arctic White Paper of China said that we are near Arctic states, but from my opinion, I always see that it's not necessary for China to see that because we are deeply influenced by climate change, and also we have many access to the Arctic. We do not need to see that we are the near Arctic state. Although that's in Heilongjiang province, we actually really very near to the Arctic, but I don't think it's necessary to see that. But you can see that it's because it's in the white paper of China. So I think that officially they still stick to that. Thanks. I hope I have already answered your questions.
Thank you, Professor Ping. So you did very well. You just made a meaningful comments, not just on your presentation, but also the important subject. I wish to continue this discussion after each of our participants made a presentation in the coming session. Okay, thank you very much. And then now I'm going to give the floor to Professor Sebastian Gadar. He is actually professor of geography in Aix-Marseille University. He was head of the Master Geometric and the Spatial Modeling and member of the Faculty Study Committee, and also he had a very wonderful background on this issue. I wish to invite Professor Sebastian Gadar to the floor. Please give him big hands.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Sir Excellence and everybody. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And first of all, as well, I want to say that I am also the BKS professor at the Federal University in Busan, where I am actually, and I'm going back is one of the way of the French-Russian cooperation in the Arctic. I'm going to take floor on my presentations. Did you see it? It's okay? Is working on? Yes? Yeah, thanks. Good. So, the French perspective on the Russian Arctic, please, you can put the next one. It's working on. You don't want to come. No. Coming, not coming. Yeah, okay, was quite. So what I want to say is, and from today is in France, I just want to give you, in fact, and the panel and the current pictures about the cooperation most main point of the cooperation, so France in the Arctic, this is the scientific cooperation, is one of the case from the most of the Arctic countries and Arctic observers. And actually we have more than 300 researchers and academics, but we are working on the very large umbrellas of almost all the fields of the discipline on the Arctic. And we are working mostly on the bilateral cooperation with the different countries, from the Canada, from the US, of course from the Scandinavian countries and the Russian Federation. One of the main problems that we have actually, and since in reality since very long, that we have a very fragmented dispersion, so the numbers of researchers, and it's very difficult in fact to see in fact how many French researchers and they are involved in terms of the Arctic research and the Arctic cooperations. And one of the challenge and from today is to try in fact and to concentrate all these people in the same umbrella and to look what we can do. And it's a very big issue. And actually, and we are working on in fact to federate all this potential and all these forces. In the same times, inside the French system, we have, by the ways of the National Research Center, some research groups that is concentrated on this part of the colleagues that we are working on, and we have also some specific groups of research. The mechanism concerning the Arctic Council and all the cooperations and with the Arctic, in fact, and is coordinated by three actors, main actors. Of course, the main one, this is the Ministries of the Foreign Affairs. So we have in fact the specific directorate that is in fact a mixed directorate that they have in fact and the diplomat and the expert has me, that in fact this is the ministries of research and higher education that is proposing in fact and some expert, and we have in fact and the pool of expert, and we are working in fact hand by hand with the foreign affairs. The second point, we have an institute. This is the Institute Pierre Victor. It's an institute that his objective, in fact, is to support in terms of logistics and sometimes in terms of grant support of the research in Arctica and in Antarctica. And we are making, in fact, and the coordinations between the expert about who is doing that. And at the list, we have, in fact, and the CNRS that is presenting also some expert, and we have in fact and this pool of expert that we are working with the foreign office, and we are managing in fact all the bilateral operations. And in the second way, this is the positions of France, but we have also some colleagues from Poland, and we can talk about that, about who strong positioning inside in fact the European scientist committees, but they are quite important with a lot of budget, because of the European Union putting on the table around 200 million euros in terms of polar research, and by this way the French are strongly represented on the board, and they participating and by this way on the European policy in terms of polar affairs and polar research. Hello, we have some problem. My computer is blocked. I don't know what's happening between. I'm very sorry, but I cannot go to the next slide. Right, it's blocked. Very sorry. Okay, it's coming back. So, but from now we have in fact since 2-3 years in fact some new actors, and the new actors is the universities. We have some small universities like the universities of Versailles, Saint-Quentin, but they are working more particularly on the Arctic affairs, and we have now the coming since this year of big universities like my university, Aix-Marseille University, where also we are covering the large numbers of disciplines of Arctic affairs, and from the law to the politics and to the oceanographies and geography, anthropology. So we are covering all the umbrella. And now, in fact, we are going in fact, and to us on the new role, in fact, and to participate the Arctic cooperation in terms of research and, of course, on the academic affairs. And by this way, so we are building and co-building inside of the European Union, but by the bilateral cooperation, as well, a lot of joint master programs with some different countries. And for example, myself, I build a very promising international master programs between France and Russia that will be now open to the Scandinavian countries and programs. And as well, each of these very big universities have some very deep expertise, like Paris-Saclay on climatology. So the policy of foreign affairs is released, in fact, and to coordinate all the French actors and to try, in fact, and with one voice that is not so easy. And the second way where the universities there will be input and the roles it will be in fact and by the way of Arctic than the Arctic Council, because from the point of view of the Arctic Council, of course, we are observers. We are trying them to participate. We want them to participate, but all the times, so it's not working so well, and we prefer now to go and by some other ways. It's one of the main points. And of course, and the Arctic policies of the foreign affairs is really strongly related to the scientific approach. The second point that we never talked about is probably the main point of Arctic cooperation is as well the interrelation between the research that the academic and researchers and they are doing with economical issues. And everybody knows that one of the pointers of Arctic and this is the economical issues. And by this way, we have the role and we are playing, in fact, and the role as experts and to decisions. And of course, one of the other point where we are working is, of course, the sanctuarizations about some elements like the gas and like the petrol. And when we made the sanctions after the annexions of the Crimean Peninsula, of course, and the French state made some pressures with American, in fact, to preserve the interest of the French and American company in the Yamal Peninsula. And in fact, what we have to understand that the French policy in terms of diplomacy is totally separate in realities and from the interest and the issues and the policies of the enterprise. Both are totally separated, and we have in fact on the different ways and approach. For example, with the British, we have the British policy in terms of Arctic policy is totally interrelated with economical interest like the gas and the petrol. And another point where we are focusing very much is, of course, and to try, in fact, to promote the protection of the Arctic environment and the green exploitations of the environment. And is one of the main points, in fact, where we are focusing. Another main point that we are focusing as well is, of course, on the questions of navigations and the free access to the Arctic sand for navigation. And it's one of the main points that we are focusing. And we have some colleagues, for example, from ex-Marseille universities in Lou, that we are working, in fact, on this question as experts. It's one of the main important points that we are. So, Arctic policy that we have, in fact, it was on the roadmap that was made and presented in 2016, and now the President of the Republic asked that the new Arctic Road that will be then presented soon, I hope, then maybe in December, then maybe in the coming of the next year, and will be then presented then by Olivier Poivre-d'Armor about the new Arctic policies of France, and of course it will integrate most and probably all the questions about the impact of the global warming in accordance with the Accord de Paris, with the COP 21, 22, and 23 right now, because of course one of the interests has many countries about the impact of the global warming. Say, this is the impact that we can have and the consequences that we can have for the national territory in terms of invest. One kind of invest we have to do in terms of infrastructures, some population, but for the long term, for the next 30 years and 40 years, and is a lot of money. And of course, for the state, need to have, in fact, a more or less clear view where the state must invest according to the impact of global warming, but is totally unrelated with what's happening in the Arctic. And he was presented for the first time in 2006 in the French policies of the Grenelle de l'Environnement. So it was one of the French policies. Another way that we never talked, but is important for France, is questions, and we talked just before about the tensions in the Arctic, and everybody knows that one of the main pointers of Arctic and one of the main roles of Arctic in more of the navigations, in more of the protections of the Arctic is the questions of the nuclear war divisions. Of course, the most majorities of the nuclear submarine they are in the Arctic, and is one of the main points for us in terms of protections of Europe, and is a very strong zones of conflict, and of course, when we have to make the interrelationships with interest, the geopolitical interest in terms of safety, with economic interest and the interest in terms of protections of the environment, sometimes is not so easy and to find, in fact, a good deal. In fact, so. What questions, in fact, for the Arctic Council? For us, of course, each working group has his home policy, his home role, and of course, when you are, for example, in the CAF or in AMAP, we are more in the typical integrations than interrelationships in terms of academics and scientists, and the cooperation and is working very well. But when we are more on the aim of sustainable working groups, in fact, is more formal, and the ways of cooperation are more difficult for us. And for us, and the main question is how to be invisible, and how, in fact, we can, in fact, and to develop, in fact, some decision-making spheres. And we are using mostly not the Arctic Council, but some other, in fact, international committee to make some pressures. And for example, when we are talking about the GOSPA, of course, in the Arctic Council, we have no voice. We are just here, just and to listen. And it's very difficult to be proactive in the Arctic Council. It's quite is not so easy. And by ways and time by times, and who are American friends, they ask us, in fact, to support them in some committee where we are more powerful. And is working not directly in the Arctic Council, but around the Arctic Council. And one of the main point where we are focusing, in fact, is that the European Union must to become, in fact, the permanent members, de facto, of the Arctic Council. We have more than 3 countries, so the European Union are in the Arctic. We have the Swedish, we have the Danish, and we have the Finnish, and we have, in fact, a large scale. But of course, for many countries, if the European Union entering as state members, that is possible, of course, it will be some difficult for some country, because we have a possibility to impose some part of our policy and on our home standard in terms of economic way. And some countries, and they don't want that. And for us, is one of the issues where we are going on. So, my question, me as an academic, as a scientist, as an expert for the French Foreign Office, participating at this policy, is first of all have no ideas what is in fact the positions about who different ministries that are involved in terms of Arctic questions, and these questions still today and it's not so clear. The second question is, this is the most easy way, of course, and is maybe then to promote, in fact, and the network of the observer state and to develop joint cooperation in terms of research programs. and maybe then to develop between the Arctic state and the network state programs. I think it would be one of the ways where we can have, in fact, and the better voice and the more open voice than to the Arctic Council, and to show that in reality we are active, because we are active, but we are not visible. So is maybe one of the ways where we can go, and by this way we can to create a very long sustainable policy in terms of cooperation between the different Arctic observer states. So that is one of my proposals, and this is a proposal we already discussed with some of our observers. So thank you very much, and I give you the floor back for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Professor Gadar. Actually, you touched on sometimes quite sensitive and important issues, and but I myself wish to raise many questions. I wish to have some in-depth discussion with you, but as a chair, first my obligation is to open the floor for your presentation. But I wish to summarize that even though France has a very strong tradition of state promoting science and technology, and also, but in this area, largely your research personnel and institutes are largely fragmented, and seemingly France is trying to do something to federate or coordinate things. And also, you mentioned the issue of how to involve in the Arctic through EU memberships broadly, and also you made a certain criticism that even working group, there is very limited room for the observers to invest their scientific capability. And but anyhow, I wish to open the floor to the points you raised. Okay, please. Suddenly quiet.
No question. That's beautiful. Maybe it's clear.
Last October, the EU released a new Arctic strategy for greener, peaceful, and prosperous Arctic. And could you please elaborate on the new strategy compared to the previous one? And what's the role of each EU country in this strategy, including the role of French state?
So we have the role of a strong role in terms of protections. The environment and the scientific aspect is very clear, and we are working on the Arctic more than 1 century. So it's not new, and we have a long tradition of working about this issue, about these questions. And of course, and as you know, we have very powerful groups that he was one of the first that is starting to show the impact and possible impact of global warming. So we are here, but in the same time, our interest are of course the protections of the environment in the Arctic, but as well we don't have to be blind. The economical interests are very important, and will be in fact and to put on some very strict and strong regulations, because the impact for the environment can be very high, very strong, and we know that every day. And as well, we have the questions of the conflict and the geopolitical conflict between different countries, and we cannot put out these questions. It is one of the points where we are focusing and more. And for us, probably the main important point, this is the coming, and the European is for us very important, and we hope that one day the European Union will be in fact a permanent member, because by this way, in back, we have in fact some stronger European Arctic policy, and this European Arctic policies and is driving in fact the part of the research in the Arctic. It's one of the points where we are focusing.
Okay, I try to go one step deeper into these questions, and in your presentation, you use the word French state at that. And everybody knows that still France is actually has a very strong central government who is have certain control on many issues. And in your own presentation, the French state is intervening on economic issues when there are geopolitical considerations. And
Yes.
and
Yeah, because
is there any kind of differences between EU policy on Arctic and the French policy on Arctic regarding geopolitical considerations?
Okay, if we are going back then 15 years ago, the Europeans and policy, it was in fact drove by the French policies and especially then by Michel Rocard, but he was the French the representative of the Arctic, he was the former Prime Minister. And of course, a large part of the European Arctic policy was built by himself, okay? And by the way, we have in fact a strong convergence between the European Arctic policies and the French Arctic policy. But now, of course, and it's very good, we have some new European countries that they are there, they have their own view, their own an opinion, and we are building, in fact, under Arctic policy, but this Arctic policy is mainly focusing in reality of the scientific affairs and about the questions of global warming. And what I want to notice, as is very important, and the economic questions are totally out of this sphere. For example, the French diplomacy is not working about the economical issue. This is the French companies that working on, and it's totally separated. And we don't have the integrative approach between them. It's totally separate.
Thank you for your wonderful comment, and I wish to open the floor again to other colleagues here.
What still resonates in my head,
Yeah.
same point, French state can intervene on issues of economic importance when there is geopolitical consideration. That's what you said. And you gave us two examples. One is Yama Sanctuary outside the US and European sanction game. And the second one was apparently not very economical Northern Sea route.
Yeah,
Are you saying France is taking some concrete measures at a government level, like offer some incentives or do some negotiating roles, things like that?
Yes,
what kind of form does it take, the governmental intervention?
I don't want to enter in the soup, but for example, in terms of policy in the foreign affairs. So me, I'm not in the foreign affairs, but I see and what's happening in the foreign affairs. You have the economic department, and you have the department like yours that is working about the questions of science, the questions of cooperation and policy. And in reality, if you are talking with large partners of the maritime company, if you are asking them, is there any economical rentability to use the North Sea Road, we answer you, no, we have no rentability. It's not interesting. Because the economical model of a North Sea Road not entering in their consideration. So we have some French company that is one of the biggest in the world. And if they're saying that we are not interested, we are not going to support this initiative. This is one of the points. And the President Macron said 2 years ago that the President Putin that we are not interested by the North Sea Road. It's clear, and it was said directly. So now, I cannot say that in the next years, the next 2 years, they will not have, in fact, a change of policy, but until now, it was this one. And the second point is a very important point. This is the free access to the Arctic Sea. If you are one day as a part of a traffic between Asia and Europe that's crossing by the North Sea Road, and one country or two countries are controlling this flux is a problem, a huge problem, and we cannot consider that as something that is profitable. I don't think so, but some countries they will accept that the flux, that the one main economic flux will be then controlled by one state. It's clear. And this is why, since 2014, 2015, we have a joint voice between France and the US to promote, in fact, the free navigations in the Arctic. It's clear.
Thank you very much, Professor Gadar. You also raised an additional interesting question, but I wish to delay to the later session. But now I wish to move on to next speaker, Professor Fujio Onishi from Japan. He will make a presentation on Japan's Arctic policy as well. Please welcome him with big hand, please.
Thank you very much. Could you hear me? Excuse me. Could you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair, for introduction. And I'm very grateful to participate in this opportunity and present my view on Japan's Arctic policy. And yes, let me start yes, like this. So today, I will talk about the national Arctic policy of Japan and proceed with the cooperation with the Arctic Council. And finally, I make some comments on the possible proposal of observatory projects from a Japanese perspective. So first, let me explain the milestones in the development of Arctic policy of Japan. There is a big demarcation before and after 2013. So in 2013, Japanese government obtained their observer status at the Arctic Council. Before that, the the measures related to the Arctic were conducted at the each ministerial level. But after 2013, obtaining observer status at the Arctic Council, the government came to consider the Arctic issue at the much higher authorities, like at the cabinet. The first signal made it clear when the government included the Arctic issues into the second basic plan on ocean policy in 2013. And the 2 years later, Japanese government formulated the first Arctic policy. And more recently, in 2018, the Arctic policy was also indicated in the third basic plan on ocean policy. And as you see from this slide, the basic plan on ocean policy is a sort of action plan of ocean policy. So, you can easily understand that Japanese Arctic policy is strongly influenced by the ocean policy of Japan. And each action plan will be renewed in every 5 years. So in 2023, we will have new basic plan on ocean policy. So we will see how the Arctic policy will be located in that policy. Okay, next slide. Let me explain the position of Arctic policy within the context of ocean policy. In the second basic plan on ocean policy, the Arctic policy was located in the other, as one of the other measures. So, namely, you can easily understand the Arctic policy is not obtained in the higher status within the ocean policy. However, in the third basic plan, position of Arctic policy is elevated. It's one of the 7 basic measures of ocean policy. That's a big change, actually. Okay, let me look into the content of the Japan's Arctic policy. I mean, there are 3 pillars. The first pillar is research and development. In this branch, we have doing in the Arctic data archive system, and also we are conducting international collaboration sites, and also we have Earth observation satellite data system as well. And in the observation and research sphere, the Arctic sustainability challenge between 2015 and 2020, and now we have second phase of the ARCS project. We used to call ARCS 2, which will last until 2024. And the last year, as you may know, the government made a decision on construction of Arctic research ship. So that was also big news for Japanese, the Arctic researchers community in Japan. In the branch of the international cooperation, the government is conducting continue the engagement in the Arctic Council, and also Japanese government joined the agreement to prevent unregulated high seas fishery in the Central Arctic Ocean. And also Japanese government is very much a very active player in the Arctic Science Ministerial, because we hosted the Science Ministerial in Tokyo. And we also, the Japanese government also engaged in trilateral high-level dialogue among the China, South Korea, and Japan. And we, Japanese government have number of bilateral cooperation with Arctic countries. And also the important personnel from government used to attend Arctic Circle as well, in the name of the international cooperation. As to the sustainable use, the JBIC, Japanese Bank of Investment Corporation, International Corporation, and also other Japanese governmental agency joined the Yamal LNG project, and also Arctic LNG 2 project as well. So all these measures or policies are controlled by headquarters for ocean policy. As you see, you see the very strong connection between the Arctic policy and the ocean policy. So let me take an example of the project under the branch of research and development. So that's ARCS 2 project. This project will promote advanced and interdisciplinary research on the Arctic aiming for the social implementation of the results. And this project have 4 strategic goals. First is advanced observation of Arctic environment change, and second, the improvement of weather and climate prediction. Third, impact of Arctic environmental change on society. And fourth, legal or policy response and research implementation for sustainable Arctic. And under these 4 strategic goals, we have 11 research programs. And I'm a lead of one of the 11 research programs. And that is about international relations. The program title is elucidating the complex dynamics of Arctic politics and its contribution to Japan's Arctic policy. This program will contribute to accuracy of scientific knowledge and by conducting research to holistically elucidate the diverse interests at play, which are rooted in values such as indigenous and traditional knowledge, as well as the complex political process in the Arctic, which are formed through the confrontation and coordination between diverse actors, stakeholders such as state authorities, local authorities, non-profit organizations, indigenous groups, and the scientists. Okay, now let me explain the current, the status of Japanese engagement with the Arctic Council. This slide is about recent updates. In September 2019, Japanese government invited the chair of senior Arctic officer to Japan, and also Japanese government participated in SAO meeting 2 months later. And also the Japanese government participated in the SAO marine mechanism. And I also joined together with the government officer to this SAO marine mechanism as well. And November 2020, importantly, Japanese government submitted the observer report. And this year, in March, delegates of Japanese government participated in international symposium on the plastic in the Arctic, hosted by the Icelandic chairmanship of Arctic Council. And also, government participated observer event on Arctic governance in April. At the same time, also Japanese government participated as an observer of the Arctic Council to the COP meeting of agreement on enhancing international Arctic science scientific cooperation. And in May, government delegates participated Arctic Council Minister meeting. Apart from this, above, experts are attending to the AC working groups, such as not only the SAO meeting, but also ACAP, AMAP, and CAF, and PAIM, and SDWG, EPPR, and EGBCM. I, by myself, attending to the ACAP working groups and also Sustainable Development working groups. Okay, in the end, let me make some comment on the proposal for a potential observer-led project. Before we start working on the project, in my opinion, we need to understand others. Otherwise, any project will neither prolong for certain duration nor produce good results. Here we find the importance of dialogue. And also, here we will find the role of the social scientists facilitating such dialogue. I mean, this slide is an example of such an attempt. Let me introduce the example. A thematic network on Arctic in Asia and Asia in the Arctic. This thematic network aims to bridge the growing symbiotic interest and active engagement between the Arctic and Asia, and we argue that it fits into the visions of inclusivity of the University of the Arctic in the advancement of education, science, research, and policy based on reciprocity and equality and trust between Northerners and other partners. It also aims to interrogate the swiftly growing interest, presence, and engagement of Asian stakeholders in the Arctic, whether as scientists and researchers, tourists, artists, and curators, entrepreneurs, or policy makers. The goal is to create and strengthen the knowledge and understanding on the relationship between the Arctic and Asia, including the lessons that may be learned from each other. But it is also welcome for participants from non-Arctic states outside the Asia. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Professor Onishi. And Professor Onishi is the Associate Professor of Hokkaido University, also Naba University. He also worked as a researcher in Norwegian Institute for Defense Studies. And today, he made a very detailed, actually, presentation on the Japan's Arctic policy. And also, I found that his observer-led proposal, such as a thematic network, is actually give us something, food for thought. And now I wish to open the floor for all of our participants.
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. I have questions regarding the trilateral cooperation. There was a mentioning in your presentation about trilateral high-level dialogue. As three countries have a lot in common, I think, I'd like to pose a question of how to promote, how to facilitate our trilateral cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I like to repeat my message for the possible cooperation. I mean, we need a mutual understanding and trust each other before conducting a great research project or producing a great result. That's most important aspect when, as a researcher, we need to really consider when we think about even the governmental trilateral cooperation, because in reality, the actor researcher in such a project. So, the governmental level is very important, but the foundation consisted of the researchers. So among researchers of three countries, before we reaching some concrete proposal, we need to facilitate our understanding of our position and interest, and continue dialogue and build trust among us. That's my answer. May I answer to you?
Thank you very much for your comment. And is there anybody who wishes to raise a question on Professor Onishi's presentation? Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Very extensive presentation, and I have two questions about. The first one is you mentioned that the Arctic CS2 project. You mentioned about the Arctic Archive data system. So my question is, what kind of data do you have And second one is you mentioned that Japan is involved with the national incorporation research for the Arctic Council. So could you explain the role and pride of this project? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. As to ADS, you will find a very broad range of information related to the Arctic. Like, for example, you can find the satellite observation data for free. And also, you can see the simulation of a sea ice formation also. And also, not only the natural science information, but you may find some social science related activities there. So, and the ADS is developing year by year, and we are, I mean, as a part of the ARCS2 project, we are encouraged to contribute from social science side. So ADS will be improved year by year. And as to your second question, the ARCS2 project collaborate government in delegating experts to the working groups of the Arctic Council. And also internally, we have some channels to deliver the scientific result to the decision makers. So I think these two pathway is a main, the relationship between the research, national projects and the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wish to continue this interesting discussion, but at the later stages. We are a little bit, okay. Professor Kim.
Hi, Fujio.
Hello, Kim-san.
Nice to see you again. Long
Nice
time
to see
no
you
see.
too.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good to hear your voice in the online. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your proposal in the EU-Arctic cooperations. I think this is very meaningful. And the Hokkaido University is one of the oldest members of the EU-Arctic. In Korea, my institute and the COPRI is also a member of the EU-Arctic. And I can see the lots of the Chinese universities are listed on the member of the EU-Arctic. So this is very important and meaningful collaboration areas among these the three countries. Thank you very much. And I have one short question. Last year, we heard that Japanese private companies were listed on the list of investors of the Arctic LNG2 project. So I'd like to ask you how it was possible in Japan to invest in Russian project. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for Dr. Kim for your very important question. And the process of private company joining the Arctic LNG2 project is so complicated, as well as the process regarding the Arctic LNG2 project. Yamala LNG project as well. So, but you can see the key common, engagement from the government. I mean, actually, the governmental agency, which is called JOGMEC, first make feasibility studies. And also the JOGMEC is a government agency, of course you know, and this agency supports and provide the information for the private company to make an investment in the Arctic. This is very basic scheme of private companies joining to the Arctic energy investment. did I answer to your question? Or well,
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. We are a little bit behind the schedule, so I wish to continue this discussion after wrapping up our presenter's presentation. Okay, we'll move on to three Korean presenters. And before doing that, thank you, Professor Nishio. You definitely will continue the discussion at the later stages again. Okay, we have three presenters from Korean side, and given the time limitation, I wish to combine these three presentations together. So, first, senior researcher Ms. Kim Ji-hye. She is Northern and Polar Region Research Development Department of Korea Maritime Institute, and also Mr. Kang Sungho, Head of Department of International Cooperation, National Institute of Ecology. Also, Mr. Kim Min-hyun, he is SAR Division of KCG HQs in charge of International SAR Cooperation. And please welcome these three research presenters with big hand, please. Ms. Kim Ji-hye, you have the floor.
네, 소개 감사드립니다. 오늘 한국
Thank you for the introduction. I would like to present the Korean Arctic policy and cooperation with the Arctic Council. I would like to give you an overview of how Korea is cooperating through the Arctic Council, and the next next two presenters will elaborate on specific projects. First, Korea became an observer to the Arctic Council in 2013, which served as an important turning point in Korea's Arctic activities. In the same year, the Korean government established its first Arctic policy in December. And Korea's observership also broadened its Arctic activities from mainly scientific fields to governance, Arctic sea routes, energy, next generation talent development, and many other areas of interest. As a responsible observer, Korea is committed to building an Arctic partnership, at the center of which is the Arctic Council. Through Korea's policy framework for the promotion of Arctic activities and the 2050 Arctic Activities Strategy, Korea also aims to bolster cooperation with the Arctic Council, which is the consultative body among the Arctic states, thereby contributing to resolve Arctic challenges. To support Arctic Council activities, Korea established in 2014 KAEN, or Korea Arctic Experts Network, with around 50 experts from more than 20 organizations. The major functions include supporting Korea's Arctic Council activities by Korean experts, sharing the outcome of Arctic meetings, including the Arctic Council meetings, discussing and suggesting Arctic policies of Korea, and engaging in a systematic Arctic Council activity. Since becoming an observer in 2013, Korea has participated in Arctic Council meetings and working group projects. AMIUM was the first working group project that Korea participated in, led by the AIA, one of the permanent participants of the Arctic Council. Through the AMIUM project, Korea contributed to mapping the marine usage of indigenous people of the Aleutian Islands, which could be the basis of selecting and using sea routes through government policies. Also, CRISO researchers are participating in a joint low-sulfur fuel project in the form of a joint research project, and Korea thereby is committed to marine oil spill response and preparation efforts as the vessel traffic is growing in the Arctic. In addition, Under the chairmanship of the Russian Federation, Korea plans to participate in the Arctic Hydrogen Energy Applications and Demonstrations Project, or AHEAD, to contribute to designing and building the Snowflake International Arctic Station in the Russian Arctic. Through this project, Korea ultimately wishes to contribute to establishing an eco-friendly and sustainable basis for living in the Arctic Circle. The AMBI project is the most global of all working group projects of the Arctic Council. Korea has been a part of this project since 2015, and this will be presented in detail by the next presenter. Other than participating in the working group projects under the Arctic Council, Korea has also translated key Arctic Council publications into Korean, held joint workshops, and engaged in many other measures to cooperate and contribute. Korea will continue to strengthen cooperation with Arctic states and with indigenous people groups. Thank you.
슬라이드 좀 부탁드리겠습니다.
Slides, please.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는
Hello, everyone. I'm Kang Sungho from the Department of International Cooperation of National Institute of Ecology. Today, I would like to talk about a project of CAF, or Conservation of Arctic Flora and Fauna, and particularly the AMBI, or the Arctic Migratory Birds Initiative. So let me give you an update on the activities that are underway. Currently, CAF has been actively engaging non-Arctic states in their programs.
다음 슬라이드 부탁드리겠습니다.
Next slide, please.
네, CAF는 Conservation of Arctic.
COF stands for Conservation of Arctic Flora and Fauna, so it's a working group on biodiversity. Currently, 8 Arctic countries are involved as board members, and we have 6 indigenous organizations. And we have observer countries and international organizations taking part in this program. ABA is the Arctic Biodiversity Assessment, and a report was released after the assessment in 2019, and there was a recommendation. It was recommendation number 8 specifically, which had to do with reducing stressors on migratory species range-wide, including habitat degradation and overharvesting on wintering and staging areas, and along flyways and other migration routes. And based on this recommendation, there were some follow-up measures by CAF, one being the AMBI initiative, the Arctic Migratory Birds Initiative, to protect and preserve the wintering and staging areas of migratory species, and currently Russia is the chair. And this AMBI is a global initiative, and it focuses on the 4 main flyways of the continents. And as you can see on the map on the right, we have the East Asian, Australasian flyway. We started off with this project from 2015 to 2019, and from 2019 to 2023 are the phased projects underway. And you can see that there's also the Central and East Asian flyway. So there was a change in the name with India acquiring the status as observer. So the name was changed from East Asian Australian Flyway to Central and East Asian Flyway. So how did Korea take part in this program? From Siberia, we have Southeast Asia and Australia, where the migratory birds will follow this route. But there's a bottleneck in China and Korea. Because the stopover sites are all determined, if there are any habitat degradation in those areas, it will have an impact on the migratory water birds. So the international community has a lot of interest in this route. So there are wetlands, tidal flats that are used as stopover sites, but we're seeing reclamation of these tidal flats that are negatively impacting the birds. So you can see that there's a lot of conservation efforts underway, but there was one very good news in Korea, where the tidal flats of Korea was inscribed on the UNESCO World Natural Heritage. So in the East Asian Flyway, you can see that this inscription actually can be a pivotal factor in protecting the wintering and staging areas for these birds. So let me give you some more information on how Korea is taking part in this initiative. First, on research. You can see that the migratory water birds utilize Korea as a stopover site, and the West Sea and the South Sea, especially in the estuaries of Kum River and Nakdong River, there were a lot of research. That was a lot of research activities that were underway. So there was this research to understand whether this was desirable for the birds, and we are reporting our findings to CAF. And the second has to do with education. At NIE, we also host the Global Ecological Cooperation Academy to nurture new talent. So this is a global academy for new researchers. And what we do is involve ourselves with international organizations and the staff of these organizations to this academy. Tom Mary, who leads the CAFA, was invited to this academy. And Courtney Price also gave us a presentation on this MB program. So they've actually shared their expertise on CAF with the participants. And next is on exhibition. In 2014 and 2018, the Arctic Congress was hosted by CAF. And there was a photo exhibition. And for the winners of that photo contest, were able to showcase their work in the Arctic Partnership Week in 2019. And in the following year of 2020 at NIE, we have an ecorium in exhibition site. And for 11 months, from February to December, the winning photos were exhibited in the NIE exhibition hall. Next, moving on to international conferences. You can see here on the bottom left, these are the organizations that we've engaged in collaboration. We have the COP Secretariat, Observer States, as well as the board, as well as the Arctic Council members. So there was a East Asian Australasian Flyway Shore Bird Science meeting held in 2020, and 450 participants were involved for 3 days in this meeting. So what we did was share the scientific aspects of the MB. So what we did was host this science meeting. And in 2018, I've mentioned that Tom Mary of CAF Secretariat and Courtney Price was invited for the Academy. And also in 2018, they were invited once again to give us some more information on the programs underway at CAF. And some booklets. As we were engaging in the projects, we thought what we can do and what contributions can be possible as observers. So we actually published a children's book, The Spoon-Billed Sandpiper Special Journey. So we have a Korean version as well as an English version. And this year, early this year, for the countries that are part in the MB program, we've actually distributed this book to 17 countries, and also to our expert groups in Korea. We've shared our Korean version with them. And last month, we've actually developed this into an e-book. And in the education session of the CAF Secretariat, we've registered this as a resource to be utilized. And last but not least is on the public awareness aspect. Habitats are important, of course, so we wanted some way to better the understanding of the public. So there's an event called Eco Expo by the Ministry of Environment. So we took part in this expo to raise the awareness of the public on the importance of habitat management.
지역 상생의 의미로 저희가 그
And there's also eco-tour programs that exist. So in the Seocheon Kumgang estuary, there are stopover sites that are critical for these migratory birds. So what we wanted to do was utilize this eco-tour program to raise the awareness of the children, of the students, on the importance of these stopover sites and habitat management. So this was also a part of the AMBI initiative. Thank you very much.
Greetings. I'm Assistant Inspector Min Hyun Kim. I'm working in Search and Rescue Division in Korea Coast Guard Headquarters. I'm a person in charge of International Search Cooperation. I'm here to talk about the brief result of Arctic Council Working Group meeting for sharing information and upcoming issues of search and rescue in Arctic region. Let me introduce last EPPR meeting in last month, focused on search and rescue part as point of view of Korea Coast Guard. I was participated the Search and Rescue Expert Group on 10th November. This meeting participate almost all Coast Guards of Arctic Council countries. And Korea Coast Guard also participated plenary meeting of second EPPR meeting on 23rd to 24th November. There was participants of 3 expert group of EPPR, which is search and rescue, marine environment, and radiation. The contents of my presentation is first, Murmansk Safe Arctic exercise held by American of Russia, second, activities of Italian Navy, and last, proposal for casualty tracking workshop by Search and Rescue Expert Group. First, Murmansk Safe Arctic exercise held by American of Russia. From Russia, introduction made Safe Arctic exercises by American of Russia were held by last September in Murmansk. As you know, the Russian Federation is chair of Arctic Council until 2023. The exercises held 9 different places in Russia with 28 functions on simultaneously. The Korea Coast Guard also observing these exercises on the Murmansk in person. These exercises proceeded step by step in the short period of time with no mistakes. It was very impressive. The Russian Federation also made governance meeting after the exercises. Korea Coast Guard learned many informations of Arctic search and rescue in this meeting. It was very productive meeting. Second, activities of Italian Navy. There was interesting presentation by Italian Navy on search and rescue expert group meeting. Although Italy is the observer country in Arctic Council, they made scientific research and expedition on Arctic region since 2017. The research made with multi-measures, not only the vessel, but also drones and satellite observation and so on. It makes possible to detailed measure information such as changes of shoreline and glaciers and etc. I think it is good example for activity of observer country on the Arctic region. And last, proposal for casualty tracking workshop from Search and Rescue Expert Group. And there was project proposal from Search and Rescue Expert Group, which was casualty tracking workshop. This proposal introduced in Search and Rescue Expert Group and approved by EPPR in plenary meeting. For reference, the Arctic Coast Guard Forum was made between the 8 permanent secretariat of Arctic Council in 2015. And they performed the combined exercise in Arctic. It's called Arctic Guardian Exercise. The Korea Coast Guard interested in participating ACGF as observer. Because the Arctic route will widely open in near future, in that time, many Korean vessels past Arctic region also needed to good search and rescue support from the adjacent Coast Guard. If Korea Coast Guard will be observer of ACGF, we will expect good search and rescue cooperation in Arctic area. The Korea Coast Guard wishes to make good relationship with ACGF. This Coast Guard made the agreement for the search and rescue cooperation in Arctic region. The contents of this agreement shows very intimate relationship between these countries. The main contents of this project is prepare for the casualty tracking system in case of accidents occurring massive casualties. The point of casualty tracking is triage. In case of massive casualty accidents, there is possibility of confusion of patients. For example, in case of transporting the patients to the hospital, light wounded casualties transferred before seriously wounded. To prevent these confusions, we need triage system for the massive casualties. This project needed to collaboration between the EPPR Search and Rescue Expert Group and ACGF Combined Operation Working Group. So they agreed, exchanged the liaison to make the efficiency of collaboration on this project. It is planned to also supported by academic and industrial functions, which is University of Alaska and Association of Arctic Expedition Cruise Operation, aka AECO. This proposal already approved this meeting, and the time frame is hold a casualty tracking workshop on next September after the research and cooperation. The project completed by March 2023. In this meeting, the Korea Coast Guard introduced e-triage system for casualty tracking using by Korea Fire Department and Korea Coast Guard on trial. It used electric tags to each patient. This tag make 4 levels of triage connected by communication network, same as the cell phone. But in the Arctic area, signal of cell phones couldn't cover all area, same as the islands of Korea. So this system can use by manually, no need to cell phone signal. It's called hybrid e-triage system. If many patients triaged by this device manually, no signal area, the device make their own networks between the patients, electric tags, and rescuers' portable tablet PC. And make her own status and statistic data. It entered the signal area, tags and tablet connect to the control network automatically, begin to use by e-triage system immediately. This system will develop patients tracking on real-time basis with GPS. The chair of Search and Rescue Expert Group interested in this system. There is possibility to introduce this system to the project afterwards. Thank you for attention. That's all.
Thank you. 3 Korean presenters with different backgrounds made presentation one by one, and Ms. Kim Jie focused on Korean polar activities in Arctic Council. Mr. Kang Sungho has made a presentation on the environmental protection efforts by Korea, including the research for migratory birds. And finally, Mr. Kim Min-hyun from Korean Coastal Guard actually made a report on the second emergency prevention, preparedness and response plenary meeting. And now floor is open, and please raise your hand.
예, 저는 한국 해양
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Min-hyun Kim of KCG. Just a simple question. Among the activities at Arctic Council, I think EPPR is one of the latest working groups that Korea has participated. So does KCG have a mid to long-term plan for participating in further EPPR settings? Well, basically the KCG from 2014, due to the Oryong vessel incident, has continued to pursue cooperation with experts at the SAREG of EPPR and the ACGF by attempting to take part as much as possible. And our biggest goal is to become an observer to the ACGF. And this will continue to be our priority.
Thank you. Yes, please.
네, 한국 북극연구 컨설.
Yes, I am Seo Hyung-kyo for the co-work. I have a question to Mr. Kang.
저기 그 북극 철.
So I know that at NIE you've been conducting this migratory birds initiative project for quite a long time. So with regard to this project, I would like to understand what's the budget and of the total AMBI project of Korea, and how much is actually being injected by NIE. Thank you for your question. So at CAP, it hasn't disclosed the budget numbers for the AMBI project, and I know that the global scale coordination is done by the Secretariat, and by continent there are coordinators that have been designated. And in the individual continents, there are some budgets that are supported in these individual flyways, and the rest is in kind. So per continent, with regard to running the programs, the observer countries, and those a part of the continent. So the Arctic states in the flyways do provide in-kind investments. And with regard to setting the goals and objectives, experts are of course involved, but they actually volunteer to provide support. And at NIE, the projects that I've mentioned, what happens is per program, what we do is collaborate in running these programs. And in international cooperation, what we do is there is a budget that is necessary to take part in international conferences. So at the board meeting of CAF, what we do is we present our achievements at these international conferences, and we also discuss follow-up projects, and we allocate about 10 to 20 million won for these business trips to the international conferences. Thank you.
Yes, okay, given the time limit, I wish to move on to next presenter. Dr. Piotr Grastki from Poland is going to present on the Arctic policy of Poland and also the way to improve observer cooperation. Please welcome Dr. Piotr Grastki with big hand.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be invited to this most interesting seminar and to have the opportunity to present about Poland's Arctic policy. In this presentation, I will briefly go through the most recent document on the Polish Arctic policy, and I will briefly cover the current involvement and cooperation within the Arctic Council and present two ideas for possible observer-led cooperative projects in the future. Although Poland has been involved in the Arctic collaboration since 1991, also during the Arctic Environmental Protection Strategy, and then was absorbed as an observer by the Arctic Council in 1998. It was only the last year that Poland has adopted its own, or the very first official document that is for stating the country's polar policy, actually, which covers both the Arctic and the Antarctic. But in this presentation, I will focus more on the Arctic part of it. So it was adopted last year, as said, in September by the Council of Ministers, and it's still not published as a official document that is available online. So that's why I cannot share the link with you. But the document summarizes Polish presence and activity in the polar regions, and it's most importantly, it also outlines the long-term objectives, states the key areas of interest, and also identifies the key actors or entities within the Polish government to implement the policy, and also defines how the implementation mechanism should work. This policy is a part of foreign policy of the country, and it's as the rest of the foreign policies aimed at safeguarding the key interests and strategic needs of Poland in the polar regions, and it's aligned and coordinated with other policies and strategies on the national level. The policy also defines how the mechanism to coordinate the implementation activities should be organized, and assigns the leading role to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also states that other ministries, including especially Ministry of Science and Higher Education, Ministry of Economic Development and Technology, and Ministry of Climate and Environment, having the key role. In the sector policies, there are also Ministry of Marine Transport, Marine Economy and Inland Navigation. There is also a minor role assigned to the Ministry of National Defense, especially in the context of security issues. A very important part of the new policy is also outreach and reaching out to the broad audience and educating and increasing awareness of the Polish society about the challenges occurring in the polar regions, especially the Arctic. And this is also an important point of reference for activities. The document is an important point of reference for activities directly and indirectly related to polar regions. Polish Arctic policy is based on 4 pillars, so-called pillars. The first is recognition and compliance with the existing international legal framework in the Arctic. The second is actively shaping EU Arctic policy, and that also assumes that Poland is actively supporting EU's observer bid at the Arctic Council. Even though the EU is de facto observer, then it's still not recognized officially as an observer. Then the third pillar is cooperation within the Arctic Council. That includes cooperation both with the Arctic states and with observers. And those include also international organizations and non-governmental organizations. And also cooperation with permanent participants. And the fourth pillar is public diplomacy, just referring to the outreach activities. The policy is also based on three principles or platforms where all the activities are taking place. So the first one is science, and that's the major and most important Polish interest in the Arctic. And Poland has been conducting scientific research in the Arctic since the 30s, the 1930s, and it's been constantly present on Svalbard, for instance, since the 50s. So it's a very long tradition and a well-established research area in Poland. And though the science engagement stimulated more engagement into international cooperation, especially in the beginning of the 90s, with other Arctic states, and international cooperation also, and this engagement within the Arctic affairs also goes into the current focus on sustainable development and in a more global perspective. The Polish Arctic policy goals can be briefly presented here. I won't go very deeply into that, but because of the time, but it's just to show you that this is what are the main areas of interest of Poland within this realm, and that's first and foremost is the active and responsible partner of the Arctic and of the Arctic. That means the Arctic states and the Arctic stakeholders, and advocating for enhanced observer activity at the Arctic Council. The second is greater domestic institutions continuity and effectiveness in reference to the Arctic. That's going back to internal organization or national organization of engagement in Arctic institutions and Arctic related activities also in other international institutions than the Arctic Council. The third is secured continuity of scientific research and freedom of scientific research, and also that science-based policy and decision-making is intact, and that also involves activities within science diplomacy. Poland also promotes relevant economic cooperation between Polish and Arctic enterprises. For example, there were economic missions organized to Greenland to make connections between Polish entrepreneurs and local actors in Greenland to explore possibilities for doing business in the region. Fifth is cooperation and partner relations with social actors in the Arctic, and that particularly refers to indigenous peoples organizations and permanent participants of the Arctic Council. And the sixth is also effectively influencing Arctic-related activities within the European Union and also other international organizations. Poland is, for instance, active within International Maritime Organization when it comes to shipping regulation, also related to the Arctic. When it comes to current involvement within the Arctic Council, and this, just to be noted, it varies from period to period. So in some periods there's more engagement in certain groups that's mainly project based. But as for now, the Polish researchers and Polish experts are involved in an expert group in support of implementation of the framework for action on black carbon and methane, sustaining Arctic observing networks. Within CAF, it's the project on action for Arctic biodiversity. That's implementation of the Arctic biodiversity assessment. And myself being involved within PAIM, I'm participating in shipping expert group and marine litter expert group meetings. And I'm involved within project on strengthening observer engagement in PAIM's shipping and related activities, and also attend Arctic shipping best practice information forum meetings. This forum is also attended by other experts from Polish universities and institutions interested in shipping in the Arctic. Since 2010, actually, Poland has developed a format for meetings between observers. That's kind of an outside of the Arctic Council, but because of the place, it was called so-called Warsaw format meetings. That's a meeting between the observers, state observers, and the SAO chair once per chairmanship in Warsaw to discuss observer-related issues within the Arctic Council. Excuse me. As for the proposals for observer-led projects, I would like to first propose a more Arctic Council level project idea. That would be to develop a cross-working group project on strengthening observer engagement, and that could be modeled on the ongoing PAIM project on the same team. And this could be, of course, launched once the PAIM project is concluded and produced some results, and could also provide some lessons for other working groups. But then developing such a project on the Arctic Council level with more engagement from observers could be an excellent idea to actually strengthen the engagement and also to showcase the observer commitment to the Arctic Council's work. The second project is more PAIM specific and is more related to my interests, and that's bringing the Arctic perspective to the global negotiations on marine plastic litter agreement, prospective agreement, which hopefully will start next year. And this is also a possibility for observers to coordinate their positions with Arctic states and to bring the Arctic perspective, or to make it more hearable at the global forum once the negotiations are launched. So that would be it. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Gracek. Dr. Piotr Gracek is actually research fellow at the Department of Social Science, Arctic University of Norway. He participated in many Polish delegations to various Arctic Councils meetings. Today, I think he is on the same page with other presenters regarding the scientific researches and working group meetings on the Arctic Council. And also he sees ample room to improve it, but also he suggested a certain kind of cross-working group and also possibly increased cooperation among observer members. Fortunately, actually, Poland is leading actor in this regard, actually running a Warsaw format of observer states. And now floor is open to other participants.
My question is private. Yeah. Mr. Dr. Gracek. About 30 years ago, I had visited in Torun, Copernicus University. That times I think that some geographer researched in Arctic area. I'm a geographer, and I think that they are a leader in Polish Arctic research. Then I have short questions. That nowadays, what is the Arctic research trend in university in Poland?
What's the Arctic research at the Torun University?
Yes. All area in University Scholar research trend in Poland.
Well, the Polish Arctic research is, or polar research for that matter, is focused on marine biology and oceanology, and that's led. All the Polish polar research is coordinated by the Committee on Polar Research under the Polish Academy of Sciences. And this committee coordinates work of different universities, although these universities can have also their independent projects and also kind of separate from this research being done by or being coordinated by the committee. But the committee is the major body that has the overview of what's going on. And Poland has also two research stations, one on Svalbard, on Spitsbergen, in Hornsund, and this is actually owned by the Institute of Geophysics of the Polish Academy of Sciences, but this station is used by a broad spectrum of different researchers, especially marine biology, oceanology, glaciology, and those are coming. These researchers are coming primarily from Institute of Oceanology of the Polish Academy of Sciences in Sopot. It's University of Silesia that is very active, Institute of Geophysics, and there are also smaller groups of researchers in different universities, like University of Wrocław, University of Torun as well. Actually, University of Torun has also its own seasonal station on Svalbard. So they organize summer expeditions and summer research field trips on Svalbard. So this research is quite widespread among different universities in Poland, but still coordinated by the Committee on Polar Research. I don't know if that answers your question, or should I?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And given this time span, I wish to actually open the floor to every presenter here. And just facilitate the last debate, I wish to summarize what we have done today. Seemingly, every presenter from every observer state is on the same page regarding the observer state need to continue to contribute the scientific research to fight, combat climate change and protect the marine environment in Arctic areas. And also, there have been certain kind of suggestions from there should be more observer-led proposals, and such as Professor Fusio Onishi mentioned that thematic networks, and also Professor Pings mentioned that we need to improve openness of Arctic Council. And Dr. Sebastian Goddard was more bold that he opened the possibility of a kind of political cooperation among observer state to have certain influence, increased influence of decision-making process in Arctic Council. And also, Dr. Piotr Grasik was also almost on the same line that certain kind of, he was quite clear that the policy, Arctic policy is based on balance between economic cooperation and also science-based policy and sustainable development. But as Poland did, that he also made it clear that Arctic policy in Poland is actually part of a foreign policy, and he wished Poland is a leading country through Warsaw Format to increase cooperation among Arctic observer states. And now the floor is open to all participants. You can raise any question to our participant today, our presenter today, please.
Hi, Peter. Are you still there? How are you? Thank you very much for your.
How are you?
Thank you very much for your proposal and comments. I have one question. Do you have any special collaboration with the neighboring Arctic or non-Arctic states, observer states, in European countries, with Poland? So if you have, please explain a little bit about that. And my second question goes to the Sebastian. Hi, Sebastian. I'd like to ask you about the relationship between French and Russia in the Arctic development. If you can give some comments on these issues, please.
Pure, you want to take the floor first?
You can go ahead, please.
Pure is the same. Yes, for the Chinese-Russian cooperation, so is a very more and more integrated cooperation between both countries. Of course, it starts by the fact, by the first step was in fact the training, in fact, on the Chinese in Russia, from the different master program, PhD program, to keep in fact the knowledge, the huge knowledge of the Russian about the Arctic, about the Russian Arctic, and also as well and to develop some programs of cooperation. And right now, we have an integrated approach based, in fact, on the joint research programs, and we are focusing maybe for 2022, but normally is going on quite fastly, to develop, in fact, every year 100 grants for the joint cooperation in terms of research between Russia and China. We've opened the mechanisms and to do that. So is what is happening right now, and this cooperation is more and more integrated. Now, I don't know how my colleagues from Russia, they will take this opportunity. Some they want, some they don't want. And this is the internal question inside Russia. But on the front of the state, between the federal and between the Chinese government is working quite well to try, in fact, and to involve more and more joint research, for sure. And 100 grants is not little. Every year.
Dr. Gracek, please.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Well, there is no formal collaboration, like in terms of intergovernmental collaboration on Arctic issues that is kind of formalized. Of course, there are bilateral consultations with. It's actually the Arctic has become a quite common topic in bilateral consultations in recent years, especially. But it's not that there is that formalized governmental collaboration with neighbors. But such consultations are especially important with bilateral meetings with Arctic states. And as far as I know, there is research collaboration, but that's going from the researchers and the research environments with Czech Republic, Germany, Denmark, also Norway, that's a bit farther neighbor, Sweden as well, and Finland. But that's again more scientific collaboration within different auspices like IASC or just direct EU grants. So that's or other grants for that matter. But it's not kind of formal collaboration with the neighbors.
Yes, it's possible to answer because the answers of Pure is always the same answer for all the European countries. In fact, is working by researchers, by the academic, by some bilateral research, and by the Euro grants. And it's true that the European Union is playing a great role and important role in terms of the support of the European research. As I said before, is around 200 million euros of grant. And of course, all the European countries, they are participating. And after this is and the links that we have between and researchers. Myself, I'm working as well with some Polish friends and colleagues with the Swedish, Finnish, and Norwegian. And is working by this way. We have a framework and we are using this framework. And this is why sometimes it's looking a bit fragmented or non-visible, but in reality is very active.
And just to add, the European Union is actually a very important platform for collaboration. So it's perhaps even more important than bilateral collaboration in Europe.
I fully agree. So after for all countries like France and Germany, is true that we have home and self programs that we have, and sometimes as the German colleagues and partners, we are developing them home research program for themselves. France, we are doing as well as the same, and so we have a lot. I think is more than the platform is an integrated approach, and they try, in fact, and to generate an integrated approach of academic and researchers in Europe. In Norway, I don't want to say that.
Thank you very much. And sir, the floor is open. Is there anybody who wishes to raise questions? Okay, please.
Thank you. I have a question to Kim Min-yeon 경사님, Korea Coast. Every summer, Korea, Japan, China, also Canada, and United States visit Pacific Arctic area. Especially Korea, Japan, China visit Central Arctic Ocean. But sometimes while they are working in Central Arctic Ocean, there is an accident, and some the patient. So in Korea, do you have any cooperation between Arctic country and non-Arctic country together? Do you have any plan to work together in EPPR and SR? Do you have any opinion about cooperation between Arctic and non-Arctic country?
Yes, that is a very good question. Because the Korea Coast Guard had many relationships with another country's Coast Guard. For example, the MPCGF, North Pacific Coast Guard Forum, the 6 country, we are one of them. And the MPCGF has also participated in China and Japan also. And we have another related forum is that the HECA, Head of Coast Guard Forum in the Southeast Asia, which is also participating in the China and Japan. And the funny thing is that the MPCGF also participating in the Canada and USA, which is that the same participants of the ACGF members. So we using this relationship with the China, USA and Canada, we wanted to participating in the ACGF as observers. So that is my wish, and we wanted to be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your wonderful contribution. I'm afraid we are almost at the closing phase, and so we should move on to next step to close today's seminar.
네, 북구협력 대표님 감사합니다.
Yes, thank you very much, Representative Hong, for moderating the session. Because of these passionate discussions, we are behind schedule. However, I would like to invite Song Sang-gun, Director General of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries, for some concluding remarks, please.
예, 오늘 글로벌 북극협력
It was a great pleasure to hold the seminar on cooperation for global Arctic with experts from around the world. Korea is an observer state, and all of the experts here are representing their respective states as observers to the Arctic Council. Right now, the overall direction in the Arctic recently was very much focused on a common response towards the climate crisis, as well as conservation of the marine ecosystem and environment. And I think that we're seeing a heightened awareness in these fronts. So not only for the Arctic states, but also for the non-Arctic observer states, I think that there are many channels that we can contribute in this process. And as was mentioned by many of our experts, when we offer our contributions, I think that scientists in the observer states, and especially organic relationship amongst the researchers, would be key. As was mentioned by our expert from France, you've mentioned about the need to utilize the platform of the EU. So even within the observer states, in order to engage in any scientific contributions, I think that the observers amongst one another needs to strengthen collaboration to contribute further to a common cause. So in that aspect, I believe that today was a very useful session. And I truly hope that going forward, we can continue on to strengthen collaboration amongst the observer states, and I hope that we can also maintain and strengthen this network. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you.
네, 이것으로
Thank you. With this, we would like to close the very first session of the Arctic Partnership Week Seminar on Cooperation for Global Arctic. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.